There comes a moment in almost every person's life when they realize that the greatest battle they are fighting is not with the world around them. It is with their own mind, the endless worries, the constant overthinking, the self-criticism that never seems to stop, the painful memories that keep replaying like an old movie, the fear of making mistakes, the fear of not being enough. Many people spend years searching for peace in new jobs, new relationships, new possessions, or new achievements. Yet even after reaching those goals, the same restless mind follows them everywhere they go. Because the problem was never outside. The problem was the relationship they had with their own thoughts. For more than 2,000 years, Buddhist wisdom has explored this exact struggle, not through complicated theories, not through blind beliefs, but through direct observation of the human experience. The teachings you are about to hear are simple, yet they have the power to completely change how you experience your life. You do not need to master all of them today. You do not need to become a monk. You do not need to change your entire lifestyle. Perhaps only one lesson will resonate deeply with you. And sometimes, one insight is enough to begin a transformation. So take a slow breath. Lodge yourself to be fully present. And let's begin with the first lesson. The lesson of the muddy water. Lesson 1. The jar of muddy water. Imagine holding a glass jar filled with water and soft earth. At first, the water is clear. You can see through it effortlessly. But then you begin to shake the jar. The dirt rises. The water becomes cloudy. Everything turns murky and unclear. Now imagine shaking it harder. Would the water become clear again? Of course not. The harder you shake it, the more disturbed it becomes. The only way for the water to return to clarity is surprisingly simple. You put the jar down, and you leave it alone. Gradually, the dirt settles. The water clears. Nothing needed to be fixed. Nothing needed to be forced. Clarity appeared naturally once the disturbance stopped. This simple image perfectly describes the human mind. Many people believe that when they feel anxious, stressed, overwhelmed, or emotionally exhausted, they must immediately solve every thought that appears. They try to think their way out of overthinking. They analyze every possible outcome. They replay conversations. They search for certainty. They seek perfect answers. Yet every attempt to control the mind often creates more noise. The mind becomes like a jar that is constantly being shaken. The irony is that peace is not something we manufacture. Peace is what remains when we stop disturbing ourselves. This does not mean ignoring problems. It does not mean pretending difficulties do not exist. It simply means recognizing when thinking has become unhelpful. There is a difference between solving a problem and endlessly circling around it. A problem-solving mind seeks understanding. An overthinking mind seeks certainty. And certainty is something life rarely offers. Think about a time when you couldn't stop worrying. Perhaps it was about money, a relationship, your future, your health, or a mistake you made years ago. Did all that worrying truly solve the issue, or did it simply make you more exhausted? The Buddha taught that suffering often grows not because of circumstances themselves, but because of our attachment to controlling what cannot be controlled. The more tightly we grasp, the more tension we create. The more tension we create, the less clearly we see. And the less clearly we see, the more we suffer. So what should we do instead? Practice putting the jar down. When you notice your thoughts spinning endlessly, pause. Observe them without chasing them. Let them exist without trying to solve them immediately. You may discover something remarkable. Beneath all the noise, clarity was there all along, just waiting for the mud to settle. And this brings us to the second lesson, a lesson about how we unintentionally create much of our own suffering. The story of the second arrow. The Buddha once shared a powerful metaphor that remains just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. Imagine a person walking through a forest. Suddenly, an arrow strikes them. The pain is immediate, sharp, unavoidable. This is the first arrow. The first arrow represents the painful experiences that life inevitably brings. A betrayal, a failure, a rejection, a loss, a disappointment, an illness. No one escapes the first arrow. It is part of being human. But then something interesting happens. Instead of tending to the wound, the person picks up another arrow and shoots themselves again. This second arrow is optional, yet most people inflict it upon themselves every single day. The second arrow is the story we create around the pain. Why did this happen to me? I should have known better. I always ruin everything. Nothing ever works out. I'm not good enough. I'm going to be miserable forever. The event itself may have lasted only a moment, but the mind keeps reliving it. Again and again, days become weeks. Weeks become months, sometimes years. The original pain has long passed, yet suffering continues. Not because of what happened, but because of what we continue telling ourselves about what happened. Think about a mistake you made in the past. Perhaps nobody else even remembers it, yet your mind still replays it. Each replay is another second arrow. Each self-judgment is another second arrow. Each catastrophic prediction about the future is another second arrow. This lesson does not ask us to deny pain. Pain deserves compassion. Pain deserves acknowledgement. What it teaches is that suffering multiplies when we fuse ourselves with every thought that appears. Mindfulness offers a different approach. Instead of believing every thought, we learn to observe it. We become the witness, the observer, the silent awareness behind the mental noise. When a painful thought appears, we can simply notice. There is sadness, there is disappointment, there is fear. Without immediately adding, "This means I am broken. This means my future is ruined. This means I will never recover." The moment we stop identifying with every mental story, something begins to shift. The wound can finally heal, because we are no longer reopening it every day. Life may still shoot the first arrow, but we can learn to stop shooting the second. And in that choice lies tremendous freedom. Lesson 3. The gardener and the seed. Modern culture often teaches us that growth must be forced. Work harder, pliff harder, improve faster, become better immediately. Many people approach personal development the same way. They create enormous lists of habits. Wake up at 5, exercise every day, meditate twice daily, read 50 books a year, journal every morning, practice gratitude every night. Within weeks, exhaustion sets in, the motivation disappears, and they blame themselves for failing. But nature teaches a different lesson. Imagine a gardener planting a seed. Can the gardener pull on the stem to make it grow faster? Can they force the roots deeper into the soil? Can they demand flowers tomorrow? Of course not. Growth does not respond to force. Growth responds to conditions. The gardener's responsibility is simple. Provide water, provide sunlight, roam weeds, protect the soil, and then wait patiently. The seed already knows how to grow. In many ways, your mind works the same way. You already possess the capacity for wisdom, for healing, for courage, for peace. The question is not whether these qualities exist. The question is whether the environment allows them to emerge. Many people spend years trying to force themselves to become confident. Yet, they continue feeding self-criticism every day. That is like watering weeds while expecting flowers. Others desperately seek happiness while constantly consuming negativity. Again, the conditions contradict the desired outcome. Before asking what new habit you should add to your life, consider what should be removed. What beliefs are choking your growth? What fears dominate your decisions? What repetitive stories keep convincing you that change is impossible? These are the weeds. And often, removing the weeds creates more transformation than planting dozens of new seeds. Real growth is surprisingly quiet. It happens beneath the surface, just as roots develop underground long before anyone sees a flower. You may not notice changes immediately, but every moment of awareness matters. Every act of kindness toward yourself matters. Every time you choose patience instead of self-judgment, you are nourishing the soil. Trust the process. Trust the season you are in. The gardener does not dig up the seed every day to check if it is growing. They simply continue caring for the conditions. Likewise, your task is not to force transformation. Your task is to create the environment where transformation can happen naturally. And sometimes, one of the biggest obstacles to growth is carrying things that no longer serve us. Which brings us to the fourth lesson, the traveler who carried the boat. Imagine a traveler standing before a wide river. The current is strong, the water is deep. Crossing seems impossible. After much effort, the traveler gathers branches, ties them together, and builds a simple raft. The raft carries him safely across the river. His life is saved. Standing on the opposite shore, he feels immense gratitude. Without the raft, he never would have made it. But then a thought enters his mind. What if I need this raft again? What if another river appears ahead? What if I cannot survive without it? So, instead of leaving the raft behind, he lifts it onto his shoulders and continues his journey. At first, it seems reasonable, but as the miles pass, the burden grows heavier. The raft catches on branches. It slows his progress. It exhausts him. The very thing that once helped him now prevents him from moving forward. This story contains one of the most profound teachings in Buddhism. Many of us are carrying old rafts. They may be emotional defenses, old beliefs, protective habits, survival strategies developed during difficult periods of our lives. Perhaps as a child you learned that showing emotions was dangerous, so you became emotionally distant. Maybe that strategy protected you once. Perhaps you experienced betrayal, so you learned never to trust anyone completely. Maybe that helped you avoid further pain, or perhaps life forced you to become fiercely independent, never asking for help, never relying on others, never allowing yourself to be vulnerable. These strategies may have been necessary once. They may even have saved you. But the question is not whether they were useful in the past. The question is whether they are still serving you now. Many people spend years carrying emotional rafts they no longer need. They continue fighting battles that ended long ago. They continue protecting themselves from dangers that are no longer present. And because of that, they cannot fully experience love, kanonj, trust, joy, or peace. Non-attachment does not mean forgetting the past. It does not mean pretending your experiences never happened. It means honoring what helped you survive while recognizing when it is time to let go. The traveler does not hate the raft. He appreciates it. He understands that carrying it forever would prevent him from reaching his destination. What are you carrying today? What old story keeps defining who you are? What outdated fear continues making your decisions? What identity have you outgrown? Growth often requires courage. Not only the courage to face new challenges, but the courage to release old protections. Sometimes, The next chapter of your life begins the moment you finally set the raft down. And when we release unnecessary burdens, we create space for something incredibly important: choice, which brings us to the fifth lesson. The space between most people live their lives in reaction mode. Something happens, and they instantly react. An email arrives, stress appears, someone criticizes them, anger explodes, a mistake occurs, self-judgment begins, a frightening thought enters the mind, anxiety takes over. The process happens so quickly that it feels automatic, almost unavoidable. Yet mindfulness reveals something extraordinary. Between every stimulus and every response, there exists a space, a brief moment, often so small that we hardly notice it. But within that tiny space lies our freedom. Imagine someone speaks harshly to you. The words enter your ears. Immediately, your body reacts. Your chest tightens. Your face becomes warm. Your heart beats faster. Most people skip directly from sensation to reaction. They attack back. They withdraw. They become defensive. Later, they regret their actions. But mindfulness teaches us to pay attention to the space between, to notice the tightening chest, to notice the racing heartbeat, to notice the emotional energy before it controls behavior. The moment awareness enters the process, everything changes. Now there is a choice. Perhaps you still feel angry, but you no longer have to become the anger. Perhaps fear is present, but fear no longer decides your next action. Perhaps sadness arises, but sadness does not define who you are. This is not suppression. This is not emotional avoidance. It is conscious observation, the ability to witness emotions without immediately obeying them. Think about how many life-changing decisions happen inside these tiny moments. A relationship may survive because someone paused before speaking. A friendship may heal because someone chose understanding instead of defensiveness. A career may flourish because someone acted from wisdom rather than fear. Entire futures can change with a single conscious breath. This is why mindfulness is often described as a practice of awakening, not because it transports us somewhere new, but because it wakes us up to choices that were always available. The more we practice awareness, the larger that space becomes. And as the space grows, so does our freedom. We stop living as prisoners of habit. We stop being controlled by every passing emotion. We stop being dragged around by every thought. Instead, we begin living intentionally, deliberately, consciously, moment by moment. And ultimately, all of these lessons point toward one final truth, a truth that many people overlook when trying to improve themselves, the truth that real transformation can never grow in the soil of self-hatred. For that we arrive at our final lesson, the lamp that lights itself. As we come to the end of this journey, take a moment to reflect on everything you've heard. The jar of muddy water taught us that clarity emerges when we stop constantly disturbing the mind. The second arrow reminded us that much of our suffering comes not from events themselves, but from the stories we attach to them. The gardener and the seed showed us that growth cannot be forced. It must be nurtured. The traveler carrying the boat revealed how old survival strategies can become unnecessary burdens. The space demonstrated that true freedom exists in the pause between stimulus and response. The lamp that lights itself taught us that compassion is not the reward for healing. It is the foundation of healing. These lessons share a common message. Your life does not change the moment the world becomes perfect. Your life changes the moment your relationship with your own mind begins to change. Many people spend years waiting for the right circumstances, waiting for more money, waiting for better opportunities, waiting for the perfect relationship, waiting for confidence, waiting for happiness. But peace is not waiting at the end of some future achievement. It begins in this moment, with this breath, with this awareness, with this choice. You do not need to master every lesson today. You do not need to transform your life overnight. In fact, trying to do everything at once would only be another way of shaking the jar. Instead, choose one lesson, just one. Perhaps you need to stop shooting the second arrow. Perhaps you need to put down the raft you have been carrying. Perhaps you need to create more space before reacting. Or perhaps you simply need to treat yourself with greater kindness. Whatever lesson speaks most deeply to your heart, begin there. Small steps taken consistently create extraordinary change. A seed does not become a tree in a day, yet every great tree began with a single moment of growth. And so can you. As you move forward from this moment, remember, you are not your thoughts. You are not your fears. You are not your past mistakes. You are the awareness capable of witnessing all of them. And within that awareness lies peace that has been present all along. A peace that does not need to be created, only remembered. Thank you for spending this time here today. May you move through life with greater clarity, greater wisdom, greater compassion, and may you discover that the freedom you have been searching for has been quietly waiting within you all along.